Hey there. So this feels like it is about career financial prospects for someone, and I'm hearing something about a sudden shift that you saw coming. Like it'll happen quickly, but it won't be surprising. So I kind of want to know what's going on with that. I've got a couple little decks here. If you're interested and feel so called, feel free to stick around and see what resonates. First, I want to start with like where you're at, when this shift kind of takes place, and then we'll look at like where you're going, as well as, why this might not be surprising and anything that you might need to know throughout this process. So, where are you at? You got the Two of Pentacles and the Eight of Swords, and that tells me that you're making it work, but it's because you feel like you have no other choice. Like there is this sense of you're almost like blinded to, I'm not going to say like, oh, you're doing, everything that you want to do. Because there's definitely an energy of doing what you're doing because you have to do it. There is this energy of, getting very good at like maybe balancing your work-life boundaries, because you know that if you don't, you're working the kind of job that will just like take over your life and destroy your emotions, or getting really good at like budgeting, because you know that if you don't have a really tight budget, you're not going to be able to like afford everything that you need. And so like there's this sense of you almost can't even like appreciate the skills that you have because of the way that they are utilized primarily for necessity, as opposed to like just doing it because you want to do it. Tell me about this job that you're in right now. Three of Wands. It's kind of like, it feels like whatever you're doing right now is like a stepping stone. Like there's like some aspect of what you're doing that is going to be helpful to you. Like you are learning something with it and, achieving certain milestones. But I think that like the milestones that like you're achieving and the things that you're learning, it's like they're not even necessarily as important like within the context to you as they will be in the way that I think that you'll use them in the future. Like this would be the energy of like someone who, does really well working, like for example, as like a dog groomer. And maybe they win some awards. They're, voted like best groomer in the city. And, it's all well and good. And, they keep it up because it pays the bills and they're proud of themselves for that. But like there is this sense of, they would rather be utilizing those skills to like work in an animal rescue. And now they've really learned how to deal with like a lot of like reactive animals and things like that. Or, like, again, in that context, like, oh, there may be a lot of animals that come into this rescue that, like, have been neglected or, mistreated and need, like, the grooming, the attention, and need someone who knows how to handle them. I know how to do that. Kind of a vibe. So it's almost like you're building some of the skills that you want, but maybe not using them in the way that is, like, the most satisfying to you. So, like, I want to know what comes next. Got the Two of Cups, the Tower. So like I said, things happening suddenly. And death. Endings. Rebirth. Transformation. You can't make this shit up. Very much, this feels like the energy of, you just, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Sometimes with this Two of Cups here. There's something about like the energy and skills that you're cultivating that's going to be like a very good match for some other energy that is like out there looking for exactly what you have. And there's something about like whoever, like whatever, this is, whether this is like a specific employer or like a bigger organization or even like a private investor or something. I don't know what you do. I'm just here to read the general collective vibe. But there's something about like, I'm hearing like a place already prepared for you. And I think that might be why this kind of like pops off really quickly. Because it's like maybe someone has been working on, you know, if we're going off the example before, like starting their own animal rescue, and they have someone on board who's like a vet tech, they have someone who's like, you know, a coordinator and budget person, but they're like, man, we really need someone who knows how to groom dogs. We really need someone who knows how to deal with reactive dogs. And everything is all set up, but like we can't move forward until we have, you know, this final member of the team. And then like, you know, they kind of connect with you, and you're out here thinking like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to, like, you know, start my own nonprofit. I'm gonna have to do this, I'm gonna have to do that. And they're like, no, you know, like we have kind of like eye to eye, like we're seeing eye to eye on these dreams that we have. You know, because the tower card, like, that can be, it can be a little bit like chaotic, or destructive, but it's specific in its destruction to breaking down old and unsustainable structures. So like there's this sense of what is like actually meant to move forward with you into the next chapter, that will persist. And, you know, it's like doors close, but it's because you're no longer holding them open, because you're moving to open the next door, you know? And like there's this sense of, you know, I think maybe in the situation that you're in right now, it's not like it feels like you're doing badly or you're fucking up, but it does kind of feel like it's maybe not, you're not like seeing eye to eye with some of like the long-term goals. So it feels like more of like kind of like a temporary holdover. And there's something about like that kind of like naturally falling away through this process of shifting and this rebirth, once you kind of like connect with, you know, the people, places, organizations that are like, hey, we've been looking for you, kind of a vibe. And it feels like with this energy, it's almost like there's this sense of relief that comes with that tower card. You know, it's like they're showing me images of, like, you know, when they're like building like a big building or something, and it's in process, and they have like all of this like scaffolding and, you know, ladders, little bridges, things, whatever, like all up around it, so that the builders can get to like the actual like building and, you know, put the structure together. It's like that's what's falling away. That's what's falling away, is all of this like external scaffolding that was needed in order to like reach the places that needed the work done, that needed things, you know, to be put together. And it's like once it's actually put together, you don't need all of that other stuff, you know, allowing this and that and moving. And it's almost like there's some like necessary clutter in your life right now from the way that things are going on. And I think like that might be contributing to this like Eight of Swords energy that feels like a little bit trapped. You know, you feel like a little bit like I'm hearing it's felt like inefficient management, you know, and that can be just literal inefficient management, but I think for some people that's also like a matter of just, you know, feeling like you could better utilize your energy, your time, your resources if you had, you know, more control or a slightly different situation or something that really allows you to, I think, more fully express what it is that is important to you about this. You know, in the dog grooming example, it's like if what's important to you is like, you know, not just the grooming part and enjoying that, but also like, you know, helping animals and, you know, providing that service to, you know, animals that were not in a great situation. It's like, okay, now you can really focus on that, and everything else that was kind of like a distraction, you know, like the super bitchy client with, you know, her super bitchy dog that, you know, doesn't, you know, need like your specialized skills or whatever, but, you know, you're like, well, I gotta do it. I gotta push back, you know, the client that might actually need me, because, you know, Fluffy needs a nail trim again, but anyone could do that type of vibe. It definitely feels like stepping into like a more specialized niche. And before, it was like you were sort of like laying the foundational the foundational setting for like all of the skills that you would need, and you kind of needed to like round out your skills here, you know, in order to gain the experience that you really wanted to have to move to this next opportunity. So that kind of like answered two of my questions in one, as far as like, you know, how things are going to shift and why it's something that like would feel sudden but not surprising. Because I think it's not surprising because it's something that you've wanted. It's like a process that you have been on some level working towards, but I think you just thought that maybe you would be doing it alone, or that it would take more time, or, you know, that there would be more complications. And I think that, you know, Spirit's almost like saying like you're more ready than you think you are. You know, and even when you don't fully see it, like other people feel it, and they look at the things that you create and the way that you move with that, and like they see it. So I want to know more about like what you can expect when you shift into this new like job opportunity. The King of Wands, I love that because that's such a contrast to the Eight of Swords. Six of Wands, also, this feels like this is kind of your moment to shine. Justice, hell yeah, hell yeah. No, this feels like a hard-earned and well-deserved victory, and the recognition that comes with it. You know, it's kind of giving like a hometown hero in some capacity, you know, because I think that there's something that you're going to be doing with this that is, you know, like I was saying before, and Justice kind of confirms that, like very aligned with your principles. But I think that it's now this feeling of you don't have to choose between aligning with your principles and, you know, feeling like you are succeeding in other areas. You know, like, going back to the same example, you know, there's plenty to glean from this, I guess, where it's like maybe you were, like, taking on, for a reduced price, like, clients that were, you know, dogs that had been in, like, situations of abuse or neglect, and that was kind of, like, you know, your little passion project. You know, but you had to kind of, like, sit and think, like, okay, you know, can I get all these other dogs groomed and still, you know, get the other client that I actually care about, but, you know, is maybe not like paying my bills done, kind of a vibe. And this feels like things are balanced out in that you don't have to choose anymore because you made the choice to, you know, get creative sometimes, like with your time, with your energy, with the way that you continue to invest yourself in the things that mattered. There's like this sense of you don't have to choose now. And I think it's like people are going to see the kind of person that you've been all along, you know, because it's like you're not stepping into the spotlight to like try and become a hero. You're just doing something that matters to you. And I think that, you know, the fact that you do it even when, you know, it may be at a loss to you, or, you know, there may be something that requires extra work or consideration, it's like that just kind of makes it all the more impressive. And there's definitely something here about like the truth of like what you stand for and what you've overcome to get to this point being very evident. And there also may be something about like this being maybe a more like public facing role, you know, and that could even be that, you know, you're just actually recognized within the organization for like the effort that you put in. Even if it's like a similar position, it's like now, you know, people are recognizing you rather than kind of like taking you for granted. Or it could be that you're actually like working with other people more directly in a way that like they can see and they can appreciate. And I think like regardless, there is a lot here about, you know, people seeing you in some capacity as like a leader, and, you know, a little bit of like a trailblazer, like a little bit of like showing people like you can make it happen. And this may be even just like in your personal life, like there may be other people who are looking at you follow, you know, a intuitive prompting, a dream, whatever, however you want to look at it, and saying like, wow, you know, you did that and then you made it work. Well, maybe I could too. well, maybe I could too. You know, and kind of like setting the stage to inspire other people to be very, very honest about what matters to them and feel like pursuing what matters to them isn't a matter of like giving up their stability. It's a matter of like integrating the two. And I think that you do a very good job with that here. Like this feels like also the energy of someone who, like, even if you got, you know, the attention or, you know, the accolades or the praise, you know, you're not someone who weighs that as more important than, you know, what it is that you do. It's like, you know, if someone is leaving you a really good review, it's like that makes you happy because it means that you did a good job and you did what you set out to do, as opposed to it makes you happy because, like, you need it to feed your ego kind of thing. And I think, like, people can pick up on that. Like, there's just, like, this confidence that it's like, yeah, you want to do a good job, you know, you want to leave the customer satisfied, but you're not, like, fishing for that, you know, you're not, like, performing for that. And I think, like, that makes people respect you more because you do the right things, but you also do them for, like, the right reasons. And I think, like, that's a lot of, you know, what people are going to see and appreciate about you with your skill. You know, it's not just that you're skilled technically in whatever it is that you're doing. There's also this sense of, you know, moral grounding and action within that I think I'm hearing is going to have, like, ripple effects in areas of your life that you might not expect. And you might not even necessarily see as connected if you're not, like, someone who's kind of, I guess, spiritually putting together all the puzzle pieces. You know, I'm hearing that a lot of things just start working out for you. A lot of things just start working out for you. And then I'm, like, hearing someone reply, it's like, well, that's not why I did it. Like, I'm not doing this for, and it's like, well, yeah, that's the point. That's the point. You're not doing this, you know, so that it fixes XYZ problem. You're doing it because you want to do it and because you think it's the right thing to do. Simple enough. And it's not even about, like, you know, some big karmic resolution in terms of the universe punishing or rewarding you for being good or bad, so much as you opening up your energy to move authentically, and that authentic energy moving in a lot of different areas of your life. And something about this little shift in career is something that I think is going to allow you to move a lot more authentically. And it's like, once you kind of, like, break the seal on that, you know, it's like then your energy just kind of like spills out to all of these areas of your life that, you know, were unbalanced or unfair. And, you know, you kind of just ride the wave. I mean, that looks like literally what she's doing there. She's kind of like riding the wave. So I want to know if there's, like, anything else that would be helpful for you to know. I have this deck here that has little mushrooms and interesting and or sometimes ambiguous freezing on them. So we're going to ask the cryptic mushrooms what the collective needs to know, would be helpful to know at any point in this journey. I accept that things I cannot control are out of my control. I cannot fight gravity, but I can learn how to fall. I am enough. This feels like a lot of surrender. You know, I think that with things, like, happening very quickly here, you know, whether that is with the opportunities that are offered or the ability to step back from things that are not serving you as well, there's, like, also this sense of making sure that you're not trying too hard to, like, hang on to control or feel like you control the situation. You know, it's like now I'm like seeing that, you know, example again of, like, someone, like, getting, you know, like, praised for work they did and then, you know, like, trying to, like, deflect it, like, well, I'm just doing my job, or it's not that big of a deal. And, you know, it's like on some level there's an element of that is about, like, control, is about this idea of, you know, I don't want someone to see me as someone who's doing this for the wrong reasons. I don't want someone to, build me up in a way that's not, da, da, da. And it's like, you can't control what someone else thinks of you. You can't necessarily control that. That is not within your control. You just have to accept that whatever you did was good enough to elicit that reaction. And I think it will be again and again and again, because there is this inevitability to this energy, especially with that, card with fighting gravity. And now I'm hearing both the from like Toy Story, like Buzz Lightyear's phrase, it's falling with style. It's not flying, it's falling with style. Kind of a thing. And then like hearing the like defying gravity from Wicked. This is so chaotic. Thank you, Cryptic Mushroom Deck. And there's this sense of learning how to falling with style, surrendering. There's something about that almost like puts you in defiance of what you thought were gravitational pulls designed to keep you held down. And I think that a lot of those, the underlying idea was not enough. Whether it's not enough time, not enough money, not enough skill, not enough support, not enough. And I think like that's like the underlying energy of this Eight of Swords that we have out, like first and foremost. It's, no matter how well you're doing at what you're doing or what milestones you achieve, it's not enough. And I think like that cycle breaks, that cycle stops as you really fully internalize well, I am enough. It is enough. I do have enough money, enough time, enough support, and even if I don't have all of those things together immediately right now, it's like I have myself and I am enough. I am enough to attract the support that I need. I am enough to, build the skills that I want. I am enough to, create and control, the resources that I have in a way that meets my needs. And, it all kind of like comes back to that centerpiece of you and, your belief in yourself, your self-efficacy, belief that, you can overcome this, that you can learn and grow with whatever that you need. Because I think with things changing very suddenly, there may be a little bit of like imposter syndrome that comes up, a little bit of like, I'm just falling. It's like, no, you're falling with style, which, I guess in this case, we'll call it flying. We'll call it flying. And if you really want to fly, then it's not even outside of your control. You can just build a hang glider, I guess. I don't know. I told you this deck is weird. It's very, very much like the energy of, if you want it, it's yours. If you want it, it's yours. And, whatever opportunities or support or whatever else it is that you feel you need, it's like that will find you when, you fully internalize that belief that like you are enough, and if someone walked along and, just randomly saw you on the street and, offered you, if you wanted to get into like modeling, like a modeling gig or something, on the cover of Vogue or whatever else, it's like, would you feel like, oh hell yeah, like I am good enough to be on the cover of Vogue? Or would you be like, oh well, I should really spend some more time, working on my fitness or practicing these smaller shoots, or it's like, do you really feel like that's these cards just like came out in my hand, so I guess we'll read those. Ten of Pentacles, the Hierophant, Page of Pentacles. Yes. I said what I said. If you want it, it's already yours. It's like with that Hierophant, there's something about this that is almost like spiritually ordained in an interesting way. Like, this is part of your spiritual inheritance. This is part of your path. And it's like the reason that you want it, the reason that you find yourself thinking about it, daydreaming about it, manifesting it, doing whatever. It's like, it's because you're supposed to have it. You know, so why not just accept that if you're supposed to have it, that means you're good enough to have it. That means you're skilled enough to have it. That means you're supported enough to have it. And when it comes in, let yourself take it, because I think that this is going to be a huge blessing and a huge shift in your life. So, we have the Ace of Pentacles on the bottom too. You know, it starts with a seed, but it's going to take you pretty far. So, hopefully that helps. And yeah, best of luck out there.